In a large modern room floating high above Earth, the leaders of humanity's most important group, the Interstellar Council, sat together. This room was part of a huge space station called Solace. The walls were smooth and shiny, and the air smelled faintly of metal and electricity. Around a long oval-shaped table, men and women from different parts of the world gathered for a meeting unlike any other. They had come to watch something historic, a live broadcast of humanity's first real conversation with an alien species. Among those seated at the table was Daniel Harper, a man in his late 50s with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent decades working as a diplomat, traveling between planets and negotiating peace deals. Beside him sat Emily Dawson, a young scientist who was known for her work on artificial intelligence and ethics. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and she tapped her pen nervously against her notebook. Across from them was Marcus Reed, a former soldier turned military strategist. His face carried the marks of battles fought long ago, and his voice always carried weight when he spoke. The group was silent as they waited for the broadcast to begin. On one side of the room, a large screen flickered to life, showing images of Mars. The red planet stretched out below, its surface covered in dust and rocks. In the middle of this barren landscape stood a small dome-shaped building where the meeting would take place. Everyone leaned forward slightly, their attention fixed on the screen. Today was a big day, not just for the people in this room, but for all of humanity. For years, scientists had known that aliens existed. They had seen ships passing by Earth, sometimes close enough to study, but never stopping to say hello. Then came the Veilith. These creatures looked nothing like humans. Their bodies were tall and thin, with translucent exoskeletons that glowed softly in the light. Some people thought they looked beautiful. Others found them strange or even scary. But no matter what anyone thought, everyone agreed on one thing. The Veilith were advanced, intelligent, and powerful. For decades, the Veilith had watched Earth quietly, studying human behavior without making contact. No one knew why they had chosen now to speak up. Perhaps they saw potential in humanity, or maybe they saw a threat. Whatever the reason, the Veilith had sent a message offering a chance to talk. If humanity could prove itself worthy, there might be opportunities for trade, knowledge sharing, and even friendship. But if not, the consequences could be dire. As the camera zoomed in on the dome, the tension in the room grew thicker. Inside, a team of humans prepared to meet the Veilith delegation. Leading them was Ambassador Laura Bennett, a confident woman, in her 40s with short blonde hair and a calm demeanor. She wore a simple suit designed to look professional yet approachable. Flanking her were two advisors, Rachel Meyer, a quick-witted lawyer, and Nathan Cole, a businessman known for his blunt honesty. Both had been chosen for their expertise in negotiation and communication. Back on Solace, Daniel glanced at Emily, and then at Marcus. "This is it," he said softly, almost to himself. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this." Emily nodded, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus crossed his arms and frowned. "Doesn't matter if we're ready or not. We don't have a choice." On the screen, the door to the dome opened, and the Veilith entered. There were 3 of them, each standing taller than the humans. Their movements were slow and deliberate, as though they were carefully considering every step. The humans bowed slightly, a gesture meant to show respect. The Veilith responded with a series of clicks and hums which were instantly translated into English through a device attached to the wall. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," the lead Veilith said. Its voice sounded mechanical but clear. "We are here to determine whether your species is capable of coexisting peacefully with others." Laura stepped forward, her expression calm but serious. "Thank you for granting us this opportunity," she began. "We represent a planet rich in diversity and innovation. Our history has taught us many lessons, and we are eager to learn from you as well." The Veilith tilted its head slightly, antennae twitching. "Your words suggest goodwill," it replied. but actions will speak louder. The exchange continued smoothly at first. Laura explained Earth's achievements in science, technology, and culture. She emphasized humanity's desire for peace and cooperation. The Valeth listened intently, occasionally asking questions that required thoughtful answers. Rachel and Nathan chimed in when needed, adding details and clarifications. But as the conversation went on, subtle signs of strain began to appear. Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his brow furrowing. At one point, he leaned over to Rachel and whispered something. Though his voice was low, the translation system picked it up, and his words echoed through the room. "They look like giant bugs," he muttered. "How are we supposed to take them seriously?" The reaction was immediate. The Valeth froze, their antennae vibrating rapidly. Laura's eyes widened and she quickly tried to smooth things over. "Please forgive my colleague," she said firmly. "His comment does not reflect our collective attitude." The Valeth leader tilted its head again, this time more sharply. "Is this how humans treat those they wish to ally with?" it asked, its tone colder than before. Laura stammered, trying to explain, but the damage had already been done. Back on Solace, the council members watched in horror as the situation unraveled. Daniel buried his face in his hands, muttering curses under his breath. Emily stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Marcus clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "What did I tell you?" Marcus growled. "One wrong move and we lose everything." Daniel raised his head, his expression grim. "It's not over yet," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Laura still has a chance to fix this. But fixing it wouldn't be easy." As the argument escalated, both sides became defensive. The Valeth accused the humans of arrogance, while the humans struggled to defend themselves without sounding dismissive. Words flew back and forth, growing sharper with each passing moment. It was clear that the polite facade everyone had worked so hard to maintain was crumbling. On Solace, the atmosphere was suffocating. The council members exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do next. Emily felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. All her research, all her hopes for peaceful relations with the Valeth, seemed to be slipping away. And yet, amidst the chaos, there was a strange sense of clarity. Humanity wasn't perfect. It never had been. But perhaps, just perhaps, this failure could teach them something valuable. After all, growth often came from mistakes. And if they could learn to admit their flaws instead of hiding them, maybe, just maybe, they could still find a way forward. As the broadcast ended and the screen went dark, silence fell over the room. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The room inside the dome on Mars was tense. Ambassador Laura Bennett stood facing the Valeth delegation, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her advisors, Rachel Meyer and Nathan Cole, flanked her on either side, their expressions a mix of anxiety and determination. The air felt heavy, not just because of the thin atmosphere outside, but also because of the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just a meeting. It was humanity's first real chance to prove itself to an alien species. Laura took a deep breath before speaking again. "We understand that trust must be earned," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves, bubbling beneath the surface. "And we are committed to earning yours." The lead Valeth, identified as Zythar, tilted its head slightly. Its translucent exoskeleton shimmered under the artificial lights of the dome. "Commitment is meaningless without action," it replied. "Show us your intentions, not your words." Rachel stepped forward cautiously, holding up a tablet displaying diagrams and charts. "Here is evidence of our efforts toward sustainability," she explained. "We have made significant progress in reducing harm to our planet and improving quality of life for all humans." Nathan crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed by the presentation. He leaned over to whisper to Rachel, though his tone carried more irritation than discretion. "Do you really think they care about solar panels and recycling? These things don't even look like they'd understand basic human concepts." His comments slipped through the translation system once again, echoing loudly in the room. The Valith froze, their antennae twitching rapidly. Laura turned sharply toward Nathan, her face flushed with anger. "Enough," she snapped, lowering her voice only slightly. "You're making this worse." Xethar's posture stiffened, its glowing body pulsing faintly with what seemed to be agitation. "Your disrespect undermines any claim of goodwill," it said, its mechanical voice colder than before. "Are these attitudes representative of your species?" Laura hesitated, unsure how to respond. She glanced at Rachel, who looked equally lost, then back at the Valith. "Not everyone thinks this way," she said finally. "We are diverse, and sometimes individuals fail to represent the whole." But the damage had already been done. The Valith exchanged a series of clicks and hums among themselves, their movements sharp and deliberate. It was clear they were discussing something important, and likely unfavorable. Laura could feel her pulse quickening as she waited for their response. Back on Solace, the council members watched the unfolding disaster in stunned silence. Daniel Harper gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "Emily." Dawson covered her mouth with one hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus Reed sat rigidly, his jaw clenched as if he were bracing for impact. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Marcus muttered bitterly. "Humans can't keep their egos in check for 5 minutes." Emily shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not fair to blame all of humanity for one person's mistake," she argued weakly. "But maybe he's right. Maybe we're not ready for this." Daniel sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Whether we're ready or not doesn't matter anymore," he said. "What matters now is how we handle this mess." On Mars, the situation continued to deteriorate. Nathan, growing increasingly frustrated, raised his voice. "Look, I'm sorry if my comments offended you," he said, addressing Scythar directly. "But let's be honest here, you're not exactly welcoming either. You act like you're better than us." Rachel gasped audibly, grabbing Nathan's arm in an attempt to pull him back. "Stop talking," she hissed. "You're ruining everything." But Nathan shrugged her off, stepping closer to the Valith. "If you want respect, you need to earn it too," he continued defiantly. "Just showing up and expecting us to grovel isn't going to work." Laura stepped between Nathan and the aliens, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Please, forgive him," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "He doesn't speak for all of us." Xethar's body glowed brighter, its antennae vibrating violently. "Your inability to control your own representatives reflects poorly on your leadership," it stated flatly. "Perhaps your species is not yet capable of meaningful dialogue." With that, the Valith delegation turned and began walking away. Their movements were slow and deliberate, each step resonating with finality. Laura reached out instinctively, as if to stop them, but dropped her hand before making contact. There was nothing left to say. Inside the dome, the remaining humans exchanged panicked looks. Rachel sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Nathan paced back and forth, muttering angrily under his breath. Laura stood motionless, staring at the empty space where the Valith had stood moments earlier. "I can't believe this happened," Rachel whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "All that preparation, all those hours of planning, and we blew it in less than 30 minutes. Nathan stopped pacing and glared at her. "Don't act like this is entirely my fault," he snapped. "They were rude from the start. Did you see how condescending they were?" "They weren't condescending, they were testing us," Rachel shot back, her frustration boiling over. "Testing whether we could stay calm and respectful even when provoked. And guess what? We failed miserably." Laura interrupted before the argument could escalate further. "Arguing won't change anything," she said firmly. "What's done is done. Now we need to figure out how to fix it, or at least minimize the damage." Meanwhile, aboard Solace, the council struggled to process what they had witnessed. Emily wiped her tears away, trying to focus on finding solutions rather than dwelling on the failure. "Maybe there's still hope," she suggested tentatively. "If we send someone else, someone who understands diplomacy better, we might be able to salvage this," Marcus scoffed, shaking his head. You think they'll give us another chance after that display? They saw straight through our polished speeches and fake smiles. No amount of sweet-talking will fix this. Daniel remained silent, his gaze fixed on the blank screen where the broadcast had ended. He knew Marcus had a point, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that giving up wasn't an option. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout history, and somehow, they had always found a way to move forward. Why should this time be any different? We need to rethink our approach, Daniel said finally, breaking the silence. Instead of trying to hide our flaws, maybe we should embrace them. Show the Valeth that we're imperfect, yes, but willing to learn and grow. Emily nodded slowly, considering his words. That could work, she admitted. Honesty might actually build more trust than perfection ever could. Marcus grunted skeptically but didn't argue. For now, at least, they had a direction to pursue, even if it felt like grasping at straws. Hours later, Laura and her team returned to Earth, greeted not by applause but by harsh criticism. News outlets replayed clips of the disastrous meeting, endlessly, dissecting every misstep and awkward moment. Social media exploded with opinions ranging from outrage to mockery. Memes mocking Nathan's comments spread like wildfire, while others praised the Valeth for maintaining composure. Despite the backlash, Laura refused to give up. She called an emergency meeting with key leaders, determined to find a way to redeem humanity in the eyes of the Valeth. Sitting in a dimly lit conference room, she addressed the group with quiet resolve. What happened on Mars was a failure. Not just mine or Nathan's, but ours as a species, she began. But failures are opportunities to learn. If we want a second chance, we need to show the Valeth that we're willing to admit our mistakes and improve. Her words struck a chord with some, though others remained skeptical. One man, a politician named Peter Grant, voiced his doubts openly. Even if we apologize, why would they trust us? He asked bluntly. They saw firsthand how quickly we lose control. That's precisely why we need to try, Laura countered. Because ignoring the problem won't make it go away. And because deep down, I believe we're better than what they saw. As the discussion continued, ideas began to emerge. Some suggested sending a new delegation composed of ordinary citizens rather than politicians or diplomats, hoping their authenticity might resonate more with the Valeth. Others proposed creating a documentary showcasing humanity's struggles and triumphs, warts and all, as a gesture of transparency. By the end of the meeting, a plan started to take shape. It was risky, unconventional, and far from guaranteed to succeed, but it was a start. As Laura left the room, exhaustion weighing heavily on her shoulders, she allowed herself a small flicker of hope. Perhaps this wasn't the end of humanity's journey with the Valeth. Perhaps it was only the beginning. The days following the disastrous meeting with the Valeth felt like a storm sweeping across Earth. News of humanity's failure spread rapidly, igniting debates and divisions everywhere. Social media platforms buzzed with arguments, memes mocking. Nathan Cole's outburst went viral, and protests erupted in cities around the globe. Some people blamed the ambassadors for their lack of control, while others accused the Valeth of being too rigid and unforgiving. The world seemed to split into two camps, those who thought humanity had been treated unfairly and those who believed the aliens were right to walk away. Amidst the chaos, Ambassador Laura Bennett tried to stay focused. She spent hours locked in her office, reviewing footage of the meeting and analyzing every word spoken. Each time she watched it, her stomach churned with regret. She replayed Nathan's comments over and over, wincing at how quickly things had spiraled out of control. But more than anything, she replayed Zythar's final words before leaving. Perhaps your species is not yet capable of meaningful dialogue. Those words haunted her, echoing in her mind long after the screen went dark. Laura wasn't alone in her struggle. Rachel Meyer, one of her advisors, sat quietly in the corner of the room, staring blankly at her notes. Her usually sharp mind felt foggy, weighed down by guilt and frustration. I should have stopped him, she murmured under her breath, referring to Nathan. If I'd acted sooner, maybe we could have salvaged something. Nathan himself was nowhere to be seen. After returning from Mars, he had retreated into seclusion, avoiding interviews and public appearances. Rumors swirled about his whereabouts. Some said he was hiding in shame, while others claimed he was doubling down on his stance, insisting that the Vaylith were arrogant and unworthy of respect. Whatever the truth, his absence only fueled the firestorm of opinions raging across the planet. Meanwhile, aboard the space station Solace, the Interstellar Council wrestled with the fallout. Daniel Harper paced back and forth in the conference room, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Emily Dawson sat slumped in her chair, her head resting on her folded arms. Marcus Reed leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but clearly troubled. "This is a disaster," Daniel muttered, breaking the silence. "Every news outlet is tearing us apart. People are losing faith, not just in the council but in humanity itself." Emily lifted her head slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe they're right to lose faith," she admitted hesitantly. "We messed up. We showed our worst side when we had the chance to show our best," Marcus snorted derisively. "You think anyone else could have done better? Humans aren't perfect. We never will be. Pretending otherwise got us into this mess in the first place." Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face him. "So what do you suggest we do? Give up? Say goodbye to any hope of working with the Vaylith?" "No," Marcus replied sharply. "But we need to stop lying to ourselves. If we want another shot, we can't sugarcoat it. We have to show them who we really are, the good, the bad, and everything in between." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of Marcus's words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Finally, Emily straightened in her seat, her eyes narrowing with determination. "He's right," she said firmly. "We've been trying so hard to present this polished version of humanity, but maybe that's not what the Vaylith care about. Maybe they want honesty." Daniel nodded slowly, considering her point. "It's risky," he acknowledged. "But if we keep doing the same thing, we'll get the same result, and I don't think we can afford to fail again." With renewed purpose, the council began brainstorming ways to approach the Vaylith differently. They decided to draft a message admitting humanity's mistakes and expressing a genuine desire to learn and grow. It wouldn't be easy. There was no guarantee the Vaylith would even respond, but it was their best chance. Back on Earth, Laura and her team worked tirelessly to craft the apology. They included reflections on the events of the meeting, acknowledging both individual failures and systemic issues within human society. They also highlighted examples of humanity's resilience and capacity for change, hoping to balance humility with optimism. Every word was carefully chosen, every sentence rewritten multiple times until they felt confident it conveyed sincerity without sounding defensive. When the message was finally ready, Laura recorded herself reading it aloud. She stood in front of a simple backdrop dressed in plain clothes to emphasize authenticity. Her tone was calm but heartfelt as she addressed the Vaylith directly. "To the Vaylith delegation and all who represent your species," she began, "we humbly apologize. For the events that transpired during our recent meeting, what happened does not reflect the values or aspirations of humanity as a whole. We recognize that we made mistakes rooted in fear, misunderstanding, and pride. But we also believe these moments offer opportunities for growth." She paused briefly, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "Humanity is flawed, yes, but we are also capable of incredible compassion, creativity, and cooperation. We ask for a second chance, not to prove perfection, but to demonstrate our willingness to improve. If you are willing to guide us, we are eager to listen and learn." After recording the message, Laura sent it to the council for approval. Once approved, it was transmitted to the Vaylith through the same channels used during the initial contact. Then came the hardest part: waiting. Days passed with no response. The silence was excruciating, filled with uncertainty and doubt. Public opinion shifted once again, with critics arguing that the apology was futile and supporters clinging to fragile hope. Laura found herself checking her communicator constantly, expecting an update that never came. During this time, Nathan re-emerged unexpectedly. He appeared on a popular news program, sitting stiffly in a chair as cameras zoomed in on his face. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by an awkward mix of defiance and remorse. "I'm not here to say I'm sorry," he began, his voice gruff. "What I said wasn't wrong. They do look weird, and yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said it out loud, but pretending I feel differently isn't going to help anyone. All I'm saying is, if they're serious about peace, they need to meet us halfway." His appearance sparked fresh waves of controversy, with some praising his honesty and others condemning his stubbornness. Regardless of public reaction, his statement added complexity to the already delicate situation. On Solace, while the council monitored developments closely, Emily spent hours analyzing data from social media, tracking shifts in sentiment and identifying potential allies among influential figures. Daniel coordinated with diplomatic teams across the globe, ensuring everyone remained aligned despite growing tensions. Marcus focused on contingency plans, preparing for the possibility that the Valith might reject humanity entirely. Then, just when hope seemed almost extinguished, a response arrived. The message was brief but significant. Sci-Fi, speaking, on behalf of the Valith, acknowledged receipt of humanity's apology. "Your words carry weight," it stated. "However, actions must follow if trust is to be rebuilt. We propose a second meeting, not as adversaries but as observers seeking mutual understanding." The news sent shockwaves through the council chamber. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, slowly, smiles began to spread across faces. Emily clapped her hands together, tears streaming down her cheeks. Daniel exhaled deeply, sinking into his chair with relief. Even Marcus allowed himself a small grin, though he quickly masked it with his usual stoic demeanor. "We did it," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "They're giving us another chance." Daniel nodded, his expression serious, but hopeful. "Yes, we did. But let's not forget, this is just the beginning. The real work starts now." As preparations for the second meeting began, Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. This time, she vowed, humanity would approach the Valith with openness and vulnerability. They wouldn't hide their flaws or pretend to be something they weren't. Instead, they would embrace their imperfections, trusting that honesty might pave the way for true connection. And so, amidst uncertainty and lingering doubts, humanity took its first tentative steps toward redemption. Whether it would lead to peace or further conflict remained to be seen, but for the first time in weeks, there was hope. The second meeting with the Valith was scheduled to take place on Venus, a planet chosen for its neutral location and harsh environment. It was a deliberate choice by the Valith, perhaps to test humanity's ability to adapt and cooperate in challenging conditions. The delegation preparing to represent Earth included Laura Bennett once again, but this time she wasn't alone. Joining her were ordinary citizens selected from across the globe, people who represented different walks of life, each bringing their unique perspective to the table. Among them was Sarah Jenkins, a farmer from Iowa with calloused hands and sun-kissed skin. She had spent most of her life working the land, tending to crops that fed her community. Her voice carried wisdom earned through years of hard labor, and her straightforward manner made her impossible to ignore. Then there was Jacob Rivera, a high school teacher from Chicago known for his passion for history and storytelling. He believed deeply in the power of education to bridge divides, and often reminded his students that understanding others began with listening. Rounding out the group was Michael Carter, a young engineer from Kenya whose innovative designs had helped bring clean water to remote villages. His quiet confidence and problem-solving skills made him an asset to the team. Before leaving for Venus, the group gathered in a training facility to prepare. They practiced scenarios, rehearsed responses, and discussed strategies for staying calm under pressure. Laura emphasized the importance of honesty above all else. "We're not here to impress them," she said firmly. "We're here to show them who we really are, flaws and all." Sarah nodded thoughtfully, her brow furrowed as she considered the task ahead. "It's scary putting ourselves out there like this," she admitted. "But I think it's also the right thing to do. If we want their trust, we have to give ours first." Jacob agreed, though he couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. What if they don't understand us? He asked. They're so different from us, not just in how they look, but in how they think. What if we say something wrong again? Michael leaned forward, his dark eyes steady. Then we apologize and try again, he said simply. That's what humans do. We make mistakes, we learn, and we keep going. Their words buoyed Laura's spirits, reminding her why she had fought so hard for this opportunity. These weren't polished diplomats or politicians. They were real people, willing to stand up and be vulnerable for the sake of peace. For the first time since the failed meeting on Mars, Laura felt a flicker of genuine optimism. When the day finally arrived, the delegation boarded a spacecraft bound for Venus. The journey was long and uncomfortable, the cramped quarters amplifying the tension among the group. Conversations ebbed and flowed, ranging from nervous jokes to serious discussions about what lay ahead. As they approached their destination, the planet loomed large outside the windows, a swirling mass of clouds and storms that seemed almost alive. Upon landing, the humans stepped onto the surface clad in protective suits designed to shield them from the extreme heat and toxic atmosphere. Ahead of them stood a structure built by the Veilith, its design both alien and elegant. The walls shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim light of the distant sun. Waiting inside were 3 Veilith emissaries, their translucent forms glowing softly against the stark interior. Laura led the way, her heart pounding as she crossed the threshold. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us again," she began, bowing slightly in respect. "We come with open hearts and minds, ready to listen and learn." Sithar tilted its head, antennae twitching gently. "Your sincerity is noted," it replied. "But sincerity alone will not suffice. Show us your truth." With that, the meeting began. Unlike the previous encounter, this one lacked formal presentations or scripted speeches. Instead, the humans took turns sharing stories from their lives, moments of triumph, struggle, failure, and growth. Sarah spoke about the challenges of farming in unpredictable weather, describing late nights spent worrying over dying crops and early mornings filled with hope as new seeds sprouted. Her words painted a picture of resilience and perseverance, qualities that resonated even with beings as foreign as the Veilith. Jacob followed, recounting tales from his classroom. He described the joy of watching students grasp complex ideas and the frustration of dealing with prejudice and ignorance. "History teaches us that progress isn't easy," he explained, "but every step forward matters, no matter how small." Finally, Michael shared his experiences working in communities without access to basic resources. He talked about the ingenuity required to build sustainable solutions using limited materials and the pride of seeing those efforts transform lives. "Humans are capable of great things when we work together," he concluded, "but we still have much to learn." Throughout these narratives, the Veilith listened intently, their expressions unreadable but attentive. Occasionally, they asked questions, seeking clarification or elaboration. Their curiosity was evident, though their reactions remained guarded. Back on Solace, the Interstellar Council monitored the exchange closely. Emily Dawson sat glued to the screen, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair. Daniel Harper paced nervously while Marcus Reed watched silently, his arms crossed. Despite the uncertainty, there was a palpable shift in the room, a cautious optimism that hadn't existed before. "They're doing it," Emily whispered, her eyes shining with emotion. "They're showing them. Us." Daniel stopped pacing and nodded slowly. "Yes, they are. Let's just hope it's enough." As the meeting continued, the tone shifted subtly. The Veilith began sharing glimpses of their own society, offering insights into their culture, values, and struggles. They spoke of unity and collective purpose, emphasizing the importance of harmony within their species. But they also acknowledged conflicts with other alien races, revealing vulnerabilities that surprised the humans. Laura listened carefully, absorbing every word. When it was her turn to speak again, she addressed the Veilith directly. "Thank you for trusting us with your stories," she said sincerely. "I see now that we're not so different. Both our species strive for progress, even if our paths are different. Maybe that's where we can find common ground. Zethar paused, its body glowing faintly as it processed her words. Perhaps, it replied cautiously. But trust is fragile. It must be nurtured. The meeting concluded without any grand declarations or promises. Instead, both sides agreed to continue communicating, taking small steps toward mutual understanding. As the humans prepared to leave, Laura turned back to the Valeth one last time. "We'll do better this time," she vowed quietly. "For all of us." On the return journey to Earth, the delegation reflected on what had transpired. Sarah smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the stars outside the window. "I think we did okay," she said softly. "Not perfect, but honest." Jacob nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Yeah, and maybe that's what they needed to see, that we're trying." Michael leaned back in his seat, a rare smile breaking through his usual stoicism. "One step at a time," he murmured. "That's all anyone can ask for." Meanwhile, aboard Solace, the council celebrated cautiously. Emily hugged Daniel, tightly, tears streaming down her face. Marcus allowed himself a rare smile, though he quickly masked it with his usual gruff demeanor. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of possibility in the air, a fragile but undeniable hope that humanity might yet find its place among the stars. And so, amidst uncertainty and lingering doubts, the journey continued. The road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but for now, humanity had taken another step forward. Whether it would lead to lasting peace or further trials remained unknown. But one thing was certain: they were determined to keep moving. The days following the second meeting with the Valeth were filled with cautious optimism. Back on Earth, news of the encounter spread quickly, though details were scarce. The delegation had been instructed to keep specifics private until the ICER Council could analyze the outcome fully. Still, snippets of information leaked through, stories of shared experiences, honest conversations, and tentative signs of mutual respect. These fragments sparked curiosity rather than outrage, a stark contrast to the backlash that followed the first meeting. Laura Bennett spent much of her time in debriefings, recounting every moment of the interaction to the Interstellar Council. She described how the Valeth had listened intently, their glowing bodies pulsing faintly as if responding to emotion. They hadn't offered guarantees or promises, but they had left the door open for continued dialogue. A small, yet significant, victory. "It wasn't perfect," Laura admitted during one session. "But I think we showed them something real, something human." Her words resonated deeply with Emily Dawson, who sat quietly in the corner of the room, scribbling notes furiously. To her, this was proof that vulnerability could be a strength. Humanity's flaws weren't hidden this time. Instead, they were laid bare, acknowledged, and accepted as part of the process. It wasn't about being flawless, it was about being genuine. Daniel Harper leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. "This is progress," he said slowly. "But it's fragile. One wrong move, and we're back where we started. Or worse." Marcus Reed nodded grimly, his usual skepticism tempered by a hint of hope. "We need to stay vigilant," he warned. "The Valeth aren't going to cut us slack just because we bared our souls. Trust has to be earned, not given." Despite their concerns, the Council agreed to focus on building momentum. They launched a global initiative aimed at fostering greater understanding between humans and the Valeth. Educational programs were developed to teach people about the alien species, their culture, their values, and their history. Artists created works inspired by the Valeth, blending human creativity with alien aesthetics. Even social media played a role, with hashtags like #LearnTogether and Bridge the Stars trending worldwide. Sarah Jenkins, Jacob Rivera, and Michael Carter became unofficial ambassadors for the cause. Their participation in the meeting gave them credibility, and their relatable personalities made them effective spokespeople. Sarah traveled across rural communities, speaking at town halls and schools about the importance of cooperation. Her message was simple: If farmers can work together to grow food, why can't nations and planets do the same? Jacob focused on urban areas, hosting workshops and storytelling sessions that encouraged empathy and curiosity. He often began by asking audiences to imagine what it might feel like to meet someone completely unlike themselves. Fear comes from misunderstanding, he explained. But once you start listening, fear turns into fascination. Michael took a more technical approach, collaborating with engineers and scientists to develop tools that could facilitate communication with the Veilith. His team worked tirelessly to improve translation software, ensuring that nuances in language wouldn't lead to further misunderstandings. Every word matters, he reminded his colleagues. Let's make sure we get them right. As these efforts gained traction, public sentiment shifted noticeably. People began to see the Veilith not as distant, intimidating figures, but as potential partners in a shared future. Skeptics still existed, of course. Some argued that humanity should prioritize its own needs before worrying about aliens. But their voices grew quieter over time. Meanwhile, aboard Solace, Emily poured herself into analyzing data from the ongoing exchanges with the Veilith. Each message sent and received was scrutinized for clues about their intentions. Patterns emerged, subtle shifts in tone, recurring themes in their responses that hinted at growing trust. It wasn't enough to declare success, but it was enough to inspire confidence. One evening, as she reviewed transcripts late into the night, Emily noticed something unusual. A recent transmission from the Veilith contained an unexpected phrase, "Your stories resonate." At first glance, it seemed innocuous, but upon closer examination, Emily realized its significance. The Veilith were acknowledging humanity's vulnerability, not just tolerating it, but valuing it. Excited, she rushed to Daniel's quarters, knocking urgently on the door. When he opened it, bleary-eyed from sleep, she thrust the transcript into his hands. "Look at this," she exclaimed, practically bouncing with energy. "They're connecting with us, really connecting." Daniel scanned the document, his expression softening as he processed the implications. "You're right," he murmured. "This is huge." Word of the discovery spread quickly among the council members. For the first time since the debacle on Mars, there was a sense of tangible accomplishment. Humanity wasn't just surviving this encounter, it was thriving, adapting, and growing in ways no one had anticipated. But challenges remained. Not everyone embraced the idea of working with the Veilith. In some corners of the world, resistance simmered beneath the surface. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read, "Earth first," and "No aliens allowed." Conspiracy theories flourished online, fueled by misinformation and fear. Some claimed the Veilith were secretly plotting to invade Earth. Others accused the Council of selling out humanity's interests. Nathan Cole re-emerged briefly, giving interviews that amplified these fears. "They're playing us," he declared during a live broadcast, "acting all friendly while they plan their next move. Don't fall for it." His words struck a chord with certain groups, reigniting debates about whether humanity should engage with the Veilith at all. Laura watched these developments with concern, knowing that division could undermine everything they had worked so hard to achieve. She decided to address the issue head-on, organizing a televised speech to speak directly to the doubters. Standing before cameras in a modest studio, Laura spoke calmly but firmly. "I understand the fear," she began. "Change is scary, especially when it involves being so different from us. But isolation isn't the answer. Closing ourselves off won't protect us. It will only hold us back." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "The Veilith have shown us patience and understanding, even when we fail to do the same. They've given us a chance to prove ourselves, not as perfect beings, but as flawed ones capable of growth. If we turn away now, we'll lose more than an opportunity for peace. We'll lose a chance to become better versions of ourselves." Her speech resonated widely, earning praise from supporters and grudging respect from critics. While it didn't silence opposition entirely, it helped shift the narrative toward unity rather than division. Back on Venus, the Veilith monitored humanity's response closely. Through their advanced technology, They observed protests, discussions, and acts of kindness alike. Sethar, in particular, noted the complexity of human behavior, the way individuals could simultaneously embrace hope and harbor fear. It was a paradox, but also a sign of potential. When the time came for another exchange, the Valith proposed a bold step, inviting a select group of humans to visit their home planet. The offer was unprecedented, a gesture of goodwill that carried both promise and risk. Accepting would require immense trust, not just from humanity but from the Valith as well. The council deliberated intensely before agreeing. "This is our chance to truly connect," Daniel argued passionately, "to show them that we're ready to take the next step." A new delegation was formed, consisting of Laura, Sarah, Jacob, and Michael, along with 2 additional members: Lisa Chen, a biologist specializing in extraterrestrial ecosystems, and Kevin Morales, a linguist fluent in multiple alien languages. Together, they prepared for the journey of a lifetime, knowing it would test their courage and resolve. As their spacecraft departed Earth bound for the Valith homeworld, the passengers exchanged nervous glances. None of them knew what awaited them, but they shared a common belief: that honesty, humility, and determination could bridge even the widest gaps. On Solace, Emily watched the launch with tears in her eyes. "They're doing it," she whispered. To Daniel, "They're really doing it." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, they are. And whatever happens, we'll be here to support them." Far below on Earth, millions of people gazed skyward, imagining the possibilities ahead. For the first time in history, humanity stood on the brink of true interstellar partnership, not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equals striving for understanding. The road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, but for now, hope burned brightly, lighting the way forward. The journey to the Valith homeworld was unlike anything the human delegation had ever experienced. Their spacecraft glided through vast stretches of space, passing by swirling nebulae and distant stars that shimmered like diamonds against the blackness. Inside the ship, the mood was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Laura Bennett sat quietly in her seat, staring out the window as she reflected on how far they had come, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Beside her, Sarah Jenkins fiddled with a small notebook, jotting down thoughts and questions for when they arrived. Jacob Rivera read aloud from a book about ancient explorers, drawing parallels between their mission and humanity's earliest voyages into the unknown. Michael Carter tinkered with a handheld device, ensuring it would function properly in an alien environment. Lisa Chen and Kevin Morales spent much of the trip reviewing data provided by the Valith. The information was sparse but intriguing, offering glimpses of ecosystems unlike anything on Earth. Lisa marveled at descriptions of bioluminescent plants that thrived in low-light conditions and creatures capable of communication through sound waves beyond human hearing. "It's breathtaking," she said softly, her eyes wide with wonder. "Everything we know about biology might have to change." Kevin nodded, flipping through pages of notes. "And the language. It's so complex, but also beautiful. I think we'll learn a lot just by listening." As they approached the Valith planet, the landscape came into view, a world bathed in soft golden light, its surface dotted with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse faintly. The delegation gazed in awe as their ship descended, landing gently on a platform surrounded by towering spires. When the hatch opened, the air smelled sweet and metallic, carrying hints of something unfamiliar yet strangely inviting. Waiting for them were several Valith emissaries, their translucent bodies glowing warmly in the sunlight. Xochithar stepped forward, its antennae twitching slightly. "Welcome," it said, its voice calm and steady. "You honor us with your presence." Laura bowed slightly, her heart pounding. "Thank you for inviting us," she replied. "We're eager to learn more about your world and ourselves." The Valith led the humans through a series of pathways lined with glowing flora, each step revealing new wonders. They passed fields of iridescent grass that swayed gently despite the absence of wind, and ponds filled with liquid that shimmered like molten glass. At one point, Lisa knelt to examine a cluster of tiny floating organisms that emitted soft hums as they moved. "This is incredible," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. Throughout the visit, the Veilith shared stories of their history, culture, and struggles. They spoke of wars fought not with weapons but with ideas, conflicts resolved through collective decision-making rather than force. They described their deep connection to their environment, emphasizing harmony over domination. Each revelation challenged the humans' understanding of what it meant to thrive as a species. Jacob listened intently, his mind racing with comparisons to human civilizations. "They've built something amazing here," he murmured to Sarah during a break. "But it's not perfect, nothing ever is, that's what makes it real." Sarah nodded, her hands clasped tightly together. "Yeah, and maybe that's why they're willing to talk to us, because they see parts of themselves in us." Back on Solace, Emily Dawson watched footage of the visit with bated breath. Every detail, the way the humans interacted with the Veilith, the expressions of curiosity and wonder on their faces, filled her with pride. She couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. All those months of arguing for honesty and vulnerability had paid off. Humanity wasn't hiding anymore. It was stepping into the light, flaws and all. Daniel Harper joined her in the viewing room, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think this will last?" he asked after a long silence. "Or are we just seeing the honeymoon phase?" Emily shrugged, though her smile suggested cautious optimism. "I don't know, but I do know this. We've taken a step no one thought possible. Even if things get rocky later, we'll always have this moment to look back on." Marcus Reed remained characteristically skeptical, pacing the corridors of Solace as he mulled over the implications. "Hope is fine," he muttered to himself, "but hope alone won't keep us safe. We need to stay sharp." On the Veilith planet, the final day of the visit arrived too quickly. As the humans prepared to leave, Zethar addressed them one last time. "Your willingness to embrace uncertainty has earned our respect," it said. "Continue on this path and perhaps we may truly call each other allies." Laura smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." The journey back to Earth felt different this time, lighter somehow. The delegation exchanged stories and laughter, their earlier nervousness replaced by a sense of accomplishment. They knew challenges lay ahead, but for now they allowed themselves to bask in the glow of what they had achieved. Upon returning, the humans were greeted as heroes. News outlets covered their arrival extensively, broadcasting interviews and sharing images of the Veilith world. Public opinion shifted dramatically, with many people expressing admiration for the aliens and gratitude for the chance to connect with them. Schools incorporated lessons about the Veilith into their curriculums, while artists created works inspired by the visit. Humanity, it seemed, was ready to embrace its place among the stars, but not everyone celebrated. Pockets of resistance remained, fueled by fear and mistrust. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read, "Stay grounded," and "Focus on Earth." Nathan Cole gave another fiery interview, accusing the council of prioritizing aliens over humanity's needs. His words resonated with some, but they lacked the venom of his earlier statements. The tide had turned, and even critics found it harder to dismiss the progress being made. Laura addressed the nation once again, speaking directly to those who doubted the alliance. "Fear is natural," she acknowledged, "but growth requires stepping outside our comfort zones. The Veilith aren't perfect, they've admitted as much, but neither are we, and that's okay. What matters is that we're trying." Her speech struck a chord, earning praise from supporters and quiet reflection from skeptics. Slowly but surely, opposition began to wane, replaced by cautious acceptance. In the weeks that followed, communication between Earth and the Veilith intensified. Joint projects were launched, ranging from scientific research to cultural exchanges. Humans learned to appreciate the beauty of alien art, while the Veilith marveled at humanity's creativity and resilience. Together, they tackled shared challenges, proving that cooperation could yield results neither species could achieve alone. Back on Solace, Emily sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of reports and notes. She glanced at a photo pinned to her wall, a snapshot of the delegation standing alongside the Veilith, smiles lighting up their faces. For the first time in years, she felt a profound sense of peace. "We did it," she whispered to herself, her voice thick with emotion. Not perfectly, but honestly. And that's enough. Daniel walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and sat down across from her. "What happens next?" he asked, sipping his drink. She took a moment to answer, her gaze drifting to the photo once more. "Whatever comes," she said finally. "As long as we keep learning, keep growing, I think we'll be okay." Far below on Earth, life continued as usual, or almost as usual. People went about their daily routines, unaware of the monumental changes unfolding above them. Yet subtle shifts began to emerge. Conversations became kinder, disagreements less hostile. Humanity, it seemed, was learning not just from the Veilith, but from itself. And so, amidst uncertainty and hope, a new chapter began. Not just for humanity, but for 2 species reaching across the stars to find common ground. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress. And sometimes that was all anyone could ask for.